Welcome back into the film room. I'm your host, Erik Turner. Another film room episode. I'm joined by my boys, Anthony and Kendall. Anthony, what's going on, brother? Glad to have you back in the film room again.
Appreciate you as always. And we got a nice episode tonight. We are fully, now that the Super Bowl is done with, we've been focused in offseason mode for the Buffalo Bills for the last several weeks after, our hearts were ripped out and stomped on in the divisional round. But now that the Super Bowl's done, I feel like that's just full kickoff, no pun intended, into the NFL offseason. We got free agency. We got the draft around the corner. There is so much content, to start to put out and cover. And we're really starting to kick that off tonight with tonight's show. And I'm pumped to have Kendall back. I'm glad that he's not in timeout anymore and he finished his algebra homework and he was allowed to join us. So I'm pumped and ready
those. Keep them coming.
I'm going to do it every single week. I have a whole bunch written down. Like I told you,
got to meet your quota. Got to meet the quota.
That's what keeps me on the show. So you got to do what the people want.
Yeah, we're glad to have Kendall back in the film room. And much like you saw in the Senior Bowl episodes and some of these scouting episodes, we each kind of took our own homework, our own assignments for this episode. Kendall, talk about, the running back situation and what running backs obviously on the Bills roster and also some of the running backs that we're going to talk about as far as free agency goes.
Yeah, so obviously there's a lot here. Everyone has talked about the inefficiency at times at the running back position. And the Bills are in a weird spot because Joe Marino actually obviously put out that tweet today, if anyone saw it, about rushing efficiency relative to the last three Super Bowl champions, and then relating that to their passing efficiency. And actually, I think it was volume. It was just pure volume. But either way, there was, I know it's a little hollow in that way, but it still gets the point across where it's like, you don't have to be a star-studded running attack to win the Super Bowl. It's just not the way the league is going. You kind of need to be more of a passing team, and obviously the Bills are. But where the Bills stand, if you're counting Reggie Gilliam, they are 20th in spending according to Spot Track. And obviously there's a Devin Singletary decision looming around the corner, based on, how the Bills have shown that they want to manage the running back position. It doesn't seem likely that he'll get a second contract. But it could be there. There's no reason to rule it out. It's obviously going to depend on the figures, but yeah, running still matters. It's about being efficient.
Aaron's fired up.
Yeah,
it's about being efficient enough though. And it does still matter. It's part of the game. You can't just not run the football.
Right. We saw how important getting Singletary going at the end of the year was for the Bills' high flying offense. So yes, of course, running still matters.
I also wanted to, I know people have been commenting too, as well, saying like, there's one comment in the chat now that says the Rams had no run game and won the Super Bowl. They had to squeeze blood from a stone in order to win that Super Bowl because their running game was so non-existent. Like you don't have to. Yes, it made it harder. The whole idea is just having enough to do it. Yeah,
Anthony, on the flip side, the Rams couldn't run the ball. Well, guess what? The Bengals had to stop the run, and they did that. With some of the free agents that they signed, last year and the year before. Yeah. So I mean, you can say, that tweet that Kendall had brought up from Marino. I get it. It was a volume thing. It wasn't an efficiency thing, but you still have to run the ball to win the game. You still have to stop the run to, again, make a team one-dimensional. So it does matter. And maybe that was just a hollow version, a hollow tweet. But we understand where he's coming from. But it's football is too complicated to just siphon it down to, okay, who's rushing the passer and who's throwing. Like, it's not that simple.
There's so much more to it with everything that's going on the sides of the ball, the players, the coaches. And you can also, I mean, there's just so many flip side arguments. I mean, I don't know why is the phrase playoff Lenny in everybody's heads? Oh, that's right. Because the Buccaneers ran the ball all over everyone in the playoffs and Leonard Fournette was a monster and they were like double-sided in terms of their attack on offense. It's an interesting piece. And yeah, Kendall, like you had an awesome chance to, go into this position grouping because it's one that's of focus. We were in this spot last year thinking like, Kendall, you and I, we talked during the season of like how we both last year were like, Zach Moss is RB1. Like, this is going to be sweet. And then this season just...
I died on that hill.
Dude, you stayed strong. You were... I respect you.
Went down with the ship.
He did, dude. He stayed. Really the song was playing. He was just saluting, and the ship was going down. He stayed sturdy.
He was my guy in that draft class. I really liked what he did at Utah, and now I'm here 10 minutes from campus. but I don't know.
Wild how
I
things
still
can
have
change.
some hope because he's still in theory like a complement to Singletary's game.
Yeah.
He just needs to do enough, and that's really all
Yeah.
we need to expect from him. Obviously, there's people in the chat here. There's people on Twitter. There's people everywhere calling for Zach Moss's head, get him off the team, all that stuff. He's still 2 more years on his rookie contract.
Yeah.
You can't get rid of
Run
that
him.
stuff. The reason they drafted him is kind of playing into that idea, like, what do we want to do with? Thank you, Randy. I see you.
Poor Kendall.
What do we want to do with Singletary when his contract is up? That's why they drafted Moss, so it makes it an easier decision, leverage against that agent of Motors, things like that. That's why you do this stuff. That's probably why the Bills will end up drafting one this year or next to make it easier on the Zach Moss decision. All that stuff, just making it easier for Brandon Beane, making sure there aren't glaring holes in any rooms, because obviously that's what he likes to do.
They also have Christian Wade, though, who's RB1. So, I mean, that'll...
Yeah.
Let's not forget about that hype train.
So, Kendall, why don't you just, you kind of alluded to the contract situation with the running backs. Briefly talk about that. And, what are the Bills looking for? Like you said, Devin, the decision on Singletary is right around the corner. Moss, we're still up in the air on what type of player he's going to be. Obviously had, some flashes last year in 2020, but 2021 is forgettable. But talk about those guys and maybe what, type of running back they are looking for to complement or add to that running back room.
So obviously we got Singletary on his last year of his rookie deal. He's at $2.8 million about, and then unrestricted free agency next year. We got Moss on 2 more years, both under $1.4 million. Then we got Gilliam, if you're counting him, he's under $1 million, then restricted free agency for that next year after this. And then this is finally the year that Christian Wade, depending on what they do with that international program stuff, this is finally the year he would be counted against the cap if, he makes the team and he's in the top 51.
He'll make the team. He's running back 1, Kendall.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Preseason running back 1.
Yeah, seriously. But anyways, the Bills really, we've floated the word out there. It's complement. We need a complementary running back to Devin Singletary, and we thought we were getting that in Zach Moss. And even if we aren't, he's still good depth. He's good depth. He's on the roster. He's cheap, good depth. So really what I'm looking for in free agency is complementary depth. What I'm looking for in the draft is a complementary developmental starter. I think there's a big difference there with, I don't want to overspend on the running back position. And if you're looking at someone in the draft to be a looking at someone in free agency to be a complementary starter, you're going to pay too much for the position. So I think you want to look for that complementary starter to develop from the draft and find a complementary depth piece in free agency. So that's the way I broke this down. And I think specifically the traits you're looking for to complement Singletary is either speed, power, or receiving ability. You pick one of those 3 and it will complement what Devin Singletary does. You don't have to check off all 3 of those boxes at once. Obviously, that would be amazing, but that's probably more of a draft thing than a free agency thing.
Very much so.
What about you, man? What are your thoughts on that position? What type of complement would you look for? Maybe even a couple of, this is a free agency show, so we're going to talk about some running backs that are realistic targets for the Bills to complement this running back room. But real quick, I mean, if you want to throw out some names in there in the draft or even free agency, go ahead, Ant.
Some of the names in the draft already started to get thrown through. You got James Cook from Georgia and Breece Hall from Iowa State, and I'm still in love with Kenneth Walker from Michigan State. Like there's a lot of quality backs coming out in this draft, and it's another year where you can have a quality back who can give you meaningful snaps, and you can get them in 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round, and there's a lot of possibilities for there. But with tonight's episode and focusing on the free agency class, I think Kendall hit it on the head because there's Devin Singletary to me coming into this year is RB1. You see the workload that he got in the back quarter of the year where he was averaging over 60 snaps a game and wasn't really coming off the field. He had a ridiculously high snap rate, and compare that to the first 13 weeks of the year where he was averaging around 30 snaps per game. They really seemed to commit to him and to that gap scheme towards the back end of the year. I think he's RB1. So, like Kendall said, you're looking for a complement, and Erik, you and I have had this conversation in terms of what kind of compliment to go with Singletary. I'm fine with anyone as long as like it's a traitsy player in one of three options, and Kendall mentioned them all. Give me a speed back who's a home run threat. Give me a receiving weapon who can transition from run to pass, who can offer you some route running out of the backfield, who understands option routes and angles and how to read coverages and what to do. Or give me a power back. Give me that. I mean, A.J. Dillon has speed for a power back, but give me that A.J. Dillon type, or give me that James Conner type. Give me, even Kenneth Walker's got some speed to him, but give me that type of compliment. Somebody that, when paired with Singletary, because Singletary is, I don't think he has any one trait to hang his hat on. I think he's above average at several things, and that's awesome. That's fantastic to be a jack of all trades. But if you pair him with someone who has a plus matchup in one of those complementary pieces, I think you're smooth sailing, just because it adds another dynamic to this offense that they don't already have. And if we can add another dynamic piece and weapon to the weaponry and arsenal that this Bills offense already has with Josh Allen and the pieces that already exist, it just adds another thing that defenses have to account for. It adds maybe a couple extra hours of film study every week in preparation for the defense in order to prepare for that angle. So give me some traitsy piece, whether it's speed, receiving ability, power, some kind of combination. 2 out of those 3 would be great. And then add it with Devin Singletary. We get a nice rotation and we're able to keep defenses off balance.
Yeah, we have a comment here. Wasn't Breida supposed to be our home run guy and we didn't even do anything with him? Well, that's because he couldn't hold on to the ball. And he was, when they asked him to run some routes and simple routes and from, split out wide in the slot, he was kind of messing some of those things up. And of course he can't block to save his life. So he was very limited. He was, he was used on a lot of those wide runs when the Bills wanted to, use that bash and counter bash type, plays. Eventually they just slid McKenzie into the backfield and ran it with him. And honestly, it was successful. So talk about, Kendall, I want you to talk about, Motor, obviously RB1 probably going into next season, and especially we're talking early now. We're not into free agency quite yet. But talk about some of the advanced metrics and where he stands across the league when we're talking about advanced metrics from like Football Outsiders or Pro Football Focus.
So for Motor specifically, he really finished middle of the pack and even slightly below middle of the pack in most of those advanced metric areas, even despite how great he did at the tail end. I wish I could have found like a breakdown for him, like post week 13 or something like that for all of these areas, but I'm not that slick with Football Outsiders yet. Anyways, he's 16th in DYAR, which is essentially just defense adjusted yards over replacement. So it just kind of gives a value for how much value that player gives when he has the ball in his hands related to a replacement level player. So he's middle of the pack. He is middle of the pack when it comes to comparing him against replacement level players. So, he's what you want. He's going to be efficient. He's not going to be the guy that's, breaking home run plays like we've said, but he's going to get you what's there. And occasionally he'll get you more. And then in terms of DVOA, he's at 5.7 above average, and DVOA, which we've referenced a lot in terms of team metrics and player metrics, is defensive adjusted value over average. So it represents the value per play over an average running back in the same game situations. So negative DOA is bad, positive is good. He's at positive 5.7 above the average. So it's good. It's not great, but it gets the job done. And you see there's good running backs in that area, but not great running backs in those areas. So it kind of goes to show like what kind of meat is left on the bone with Singletary, because it is sufficient, but I think we're all striving for more than just sufficiency.
Right. And so if he's pretty average when you look at some of those advanced metrics. And yes, he did come on late in the year when they switched to more of a gap scheme, kind of like the success he had in prior years when the Bills started to run those pin and pull runs. I mean, I'm not sure why they waited so long to go to that, but either way, if we're looking for a complimentary back and we're looking for realistic options, obviously Beane has invested, mid-round picks towards this position in Moss and Motor. So you don't really expect them to go high at running back in the draft, but you never know with Beane. He's been talking about this for years now, adding speed to the position, but not quite pulling the trigger for those, upper echelon running backs in the draft or even free agency for that matter. So let's talk about some realistic options that are in free agency that could not necessarily replace Motor, but complement him and really help the offense.
Yeah, so I know everyone wants to talk about, like, the Melvin Gordons, the Cordero Pattersons, the James Connors. Like, those guys are great. They're absolutely amazing, but they're just out of our price range. And if you haven't watched this salary cap spectacular, please do yourself a favor and watch that, because it'll set the table for what I'm trying to put across here. And really, the one player of this group that I think is still in that area of realism, but just really at that low end where this is probably the least realistic, but the most hopeful person I would want is Chase Edmonds. He's at 5.2 million annual average value, projected market value per Spot Track. I watched the Cardinals all year for my job with SIS. I'm very familiar with his game. He's really a great natural playmaker. He's more comfortable as a zone runner versus that gap scheme, which could work to Aaron Cromer potentially. We don't exactly know what he wants to bring, but obviously we know what he did most recently with zone stuff.
Sure.
And it also complements to Devin Singletary and the gap stuff. Obviously, you don't want to give away tendencies that easily with just the running back that's in the game, but he will offer more as a zone runner. As I said, he's a natural playmaker. He's got good play speed despite 4.55 40-yard dash time at his at the combine. I think he plays faster than that. He's got great agility and elusiveness. He's consistently making the first man miss, which is what running backs are supposed to do. He's got great contact balance because he's 5'9", that lower center of gravity, thicker lower half than top half really helps him stay on his feet and keep good balance. But really the thing that makes him the compliment is his receiving ability. He is more in that mold where he's going to be the receiving and speed, that mold versus the power mold. And he's going to be a third down back. Mostly that's what he's going to be. And it's kind of in the same vein as Matt Breida, where he can be on the field for pass protection, but he's kind of inconsistent in that area, but adequate.
He's a playmaker. Enough. You don't want him in there as a blocker. You have him in there on those passing downs for that receiving option. And, I would love for them to sign a guy like Edmonds. We're looking at some of the receiving stats here, courtesy of Pro Football Focus. And you can see 311 yards last year on 43 receptions, 7.2 yards per reception. And they lined him up all over the place. If you kind of look to the right of this, you can see the wide percentage, how often he was lined up out wide, outside of the formation. You see there's a pretty good chunk of games where he's lined up outside, in double digits, in the teen percentages. He was put in the slot. But yeah, he's a really dynamic runner. I love your mention about his play speed, plays way faster than his 40 time. And you see that a lot in their screen game. That's one thing the Cardinals did better than pretty much anyone in the NFL last year, is in that spread scheme, in that air raid scheme from Kingsbury. You saw Edmonds be used a lot in the screen game, and getting him the ball on those creative screens, something that I know Bills fans have been clamoring for years when Brian Dable was the offensive coordinator. And we hope that, once Dorsey takes over and starts installing that playbook and drawing up those plays, you hope that the screen game will be augmented as far as not just to wide receivers, because the Bills had, plenty of wide receiver screens, especially as an extension of the run game, out to Beasley, out to McKenzie, out to Diggs sometimes. But you want to see it from the running back position, because you want to see your running back get matched up on linebackers, on safeties. And a guy like Edmonds can really, take that mismatch and take one to the house. Anthony, you have any thoughts on Edmonds, the receiver? Obviously a different element at the position if they were able to get a guy like him.
He's a back I've liked for a while there in Arizona. He had a brief time to shine 2 seasons ago or 3 seasons ago when there was injuries in the Arizona backfield, and he had an explosive game against the Giants in New York on both the ground and in the air. He's somebody who, we talk about compliments. I think he's a beautiful and almost perfect complement to Motor, because he can do what Motor can't. He offers you a little, piece in the run game as well, but it's that mismatch potential right in the passing game, which is something that flat out this Bills offense has not had. They have not had a running back that if they get lined up one-on-one with a linebacker, or a safety in the passing game that can take advantage of that matchup. That's something the Bills offense hasn't had. And all of a sudden you add somebody like a Chase Edmonds, someone who's very comfortable transitioning from the backfield to out in space, whether with the ball in his hands or running a route, someone who's comfortable in space, who's comfortable running those angle routes and those option routes and making that transition. I think it would be a tremendous add. And again, it's another tool in the belt of this offense that's already a very good offense. And all of a sudden you're adding another thing that defenses have to account for.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if you threw out the numbers there, Kendall, but what was the kind of the AAV projection for a guy like Edmonds if the Bills were to make an offer? What's the kind of the ballpark figure for him?
It's listed at $5.2 million per year.
Okay.
So it's something that the Bills could swing. It's just on the spectrum of least likely in terms of all of these realistic options that I've put forth. This is probably the least likely one and the one I'm most hopeful for. But like I said before, it's very, you got to be strategic with the running back position nowadays. You don't want to get too overzealous with spending there because obviously there's a lot of wear and tear there. They go quickly. You don't want to pay a running back too much just to end up injured. And he has had some availability concerns, but nothing too eye-opening to really create any fear.
Right. So you picked a few plays from Edmonds from this past season. So I'll leave the floor to you. Obviously, this first one, it looks like he's kind of just leaking out of the backfield. And I showed the graph for him prior to flipping to this film. And a lot of his receptions were in that check down area, something the Bills targeted Devin Singletary a lot of, late in the year when the offense started humming, right?
Yeah, they definitely did. And it was funny because I saw on that graphic that he was actually catching a lot of stuff really well on that left side of the field, which I found actually really interesting. I didn't notice that this year. But yeah, he definitely caught a lot of checkdowns in that middle short intermediate area, and he's capable of making that first man miss, like I said. But on this play, why I picked it, this isn't the first and only one that I saw. I saw this a lot. His ability to perform the scramble drill with someone like Kyler Murray, you got to be able to do it. You got to be able to improvise with your quarterback and get open. And obviously that's something that Josh Allen does as well. So seeing that trait, that understanding, that ability to find soft spots in coverage, just coverage in general, and be able to make yourself available for the guy, that's huge. And obviously making the play after is big.
Yeah, Anthony, real quick, I want you to add on to that point about, the scramble drill, man, because it's something that I remember the first year when Nate and I were doing those film rooms. Like, it's something the Bills were terrible at. You guys remember late in the game against the Dolphins when they went to scramble drill. Josh is turning his back to the line of scrimmage, scrambling all over, and then throws this,
Charles
duck.
Clay.
Yeah, to Charles Clay. And the scramble drill, I remember breaking that down like, man, the Bills are bad at this. They need to practice. And from there on out, the years following, they've gotten so much better. And I love this point. And this kind of falls by the wayside a lot when we talk about running backs in the scramble drill, because, they're usually the closest guy to the quarterback. They are guys that can get into the vision of their quarterback. You see Murray's running to the left here, and Edmonds is able to find green for his quarterback.
It's a situational awareness piece that I don't think gets talked about enough. And what's beautiful about this clip is, you hit it right there, Erik. Like, Chase Edmonds is working his way back and making himself available. Then he's also like literally signaling, like he's throwing his hand up in addition to coming across Kyler Murray's face. Like, he's doing anything and everything to, be that guy on the runway trying to signal to the airplane, like where to land. Like, that's a quarterback friendly play from a running back in a situation where Kyler Murray's under duress. Like, he's trying to make a play. He's got the best player in football and Aaron Donald bearing down on him, and he's trying to figure out what to do, and he doesn't have an immediate outlet. And then all of a sudden he looks back towards the middle of the field, and there's Chase Edmonds. Like, that's an easy play for a back to be like, well, my initial thing wasn't there, or, maybe they leak out to the right instead of coming back towards the middle because they don't have that situational awareness. That's a heady play by Chase Edmonds in addition to his physical ability. That's a heady play of him knowing where his quarterback is, how that play is designed, and what he can do to contribute when it all breaks down.
Yeah, and Kendall, they're backed up here on 3rd and 7, and you see him hit the hole on this play and get a chunky yardage for his offense.
Oof. Yeah, I mean, this is literally just a play to give your punter some space, and they end up getting themselves in the Rams territory here. Really nothing crazy in terms of a vision standpoint, just kind of sees the Rams over pursue here and he cuts it faster than a 4.55. Like you can see it on this play. He plays faster than that 40 speed, but also the fluid ability to just kind of stick that foot in the ground and turn Jordan Fuller around right there and keep his motion to this offense. What I want to add lastly is, there's people in here saying $5 million for a running back is too much. And honestly, look at what happened when you give a minimum contract to Matt Breida, and we didn't get what we wanted out of him. Sometimes you do have to break the bank a little bit to get the production that you want.
Yeah, no, you're right, man. And that's a good point. And yeah, I'm with most of the chat when they talk about that, you know, but if you want the type of back that can complement not just the running back room, but really complement and take your offense to that next level. Again, the Bills don't target the running backs often, and that's because they don't have running backs that are good when they are targeted. And that's not just talking about the screen game, because honestly, the Bills, and a lot of this falls on Josh Allen, is the Bills aren't really a good screen team to the running backs, because when you're running a screen, you're funneling these offensive linemen in. You're basically not blocking them, but you're trying to funnel them to a certain area and allowing them to get pressure on your quarterback. And at times, Josh, he doesn't hold that screen when you're drifting back and looking in the opposite direction of the running back that's setting up the screen to your left. He kind of fast forwards through that progression of the screen game. So part of it is Josh Allen. Part of it is how teams defend Josh Allen. They are always worried about their, rush lane integrity or have a spy on Josh Allen. It's hard to run screens when you have, 4 defensive linemen or 5 pass rushers coming at Josh Allen and worried about keeping him in the pocket and not allowing him to escape the pocket. So it's hard to run screens when all eyes are on your quarterback. And so part of that is Josh Allen. But I love this play you picked here, Kendall, because, again, you see the Colts playing that too high look. You see the 3 underneath defenders to the top of the screen. You see the running back just, chip, leak out. Oh, my goodness. Like, give me that yardage that, that's just stealing yards. But then, again, the soft hands and really the skill set to get the first down.
Yeah, this is the extension of the run game. You see him, like you said, on that little chip curl route there, getting his job done with the pass protection, because this is essentially his limitations with pass protection. He's a chip curl route kind of guy. He's just going to chip you and he's going to get out into his route. But yeah, the soft hands to make this one-handed catch. And I mean, the Cardinals backfield was making one-handed catches all years. I don't know what they're drinking over there, but
that is true. Connor was one-handed catches like
Yeah.
every other day.
I don't know what that was about, but they were all about it. Their running backs knew how to catch the football. But yeah, right after the catch, you pause it at the perfect moment. It's his ability to put his foot in the ground and just be a natural playmaker. There's not so much to evaluate when it comes to watching him, because it's just like he just knows how to innately make people miss and get more yards than what are readily available to him. And you see, even at the tail end of this play, after he makes that first linebacker miss, he almost pulls a nasty spin move on the safety here. You just can't really keep his balance on him, but he's really good at not getting squared up. Like he's really good at keeping his body clean in that way. When he gets tackled, he's kind of getting tripped. He's getting leg tackled, stuff like that. It's nothing like really getting squared up. He knows how to keep his wits about him in terms of keeping that contact balance and making sure he's fighting for extra yards afterwards.
Anthony, anything to add to wrap up this segment on Edmonds?
I love how as he's bringing this ball in on this specific play, he's already like setting up his move on the linebacker, who I believe is EJ Speed. He starts to one-hand this and he eyeballs Speed, brings this in, and as he gets his second hand on the ball, puts that foot in the ground, gets a ridiculously wide base. His knees are almost like parallel. It almost looks like an injury is about to happen, but it doesn't. And look how he just bursts through. Like this is another example, right, of, especially in pairing it with that previous play on the run by Edmonds. This is an option and a piece that the Bills do not currently have in this backfield. They do not have explosivity. They do not have burst like that coming out of the backfield, a playmaker who's dangerous with space and with the ball in his hands. And we saw what Singletary was able to do from time to time with Josh Allen, especially against the Patriots. We saw Josh dropping back, Singletary leaking out, and Josh getting Singletary the ball early in his route out of the backfield to take advantage of those deep linebackers dropping. And Singletary did well with it, but it gets to another level when you have that space for a running back with speed and that elusiveness in open field with someone like Chase Edmonds. Like, it's a really interesting proposal to be able to think about what this offense could look like with that type of skill set in the backfield, again, coupled with what they already have.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like him again. Yes, the money is probably the biggest talking point with him, but obviously, you throw a guy like that in the Bills' offense, and the Bills haven't had one of those since Josh Allen's been here. So I would love to see him in the Bills' offense. But let's talk about another guy that maybe is a little more realistic, maybe a little more affordable at the running back position.
Yeah, there are a lot in this area. Like, I mean, a lot. I had to float names out to you guys, and I stole your guy, Erik, because once you said it, I was like, yeah, no, I like that a lot. But before I jump into that, I need everyone to know, like, all of these guys are squarely on the table and very realistic. I'm talking Darrell Williams for the Chiefs. I'm talking Marlon Mack, who's coming off injuries, who was productive in Indianapolis. Ronald Jones, who showed spurts of production for the Tampa Bay Bucks. JD McKissick.
I think McKissick would be awesome. Like, that's such an
perfect.
ideal compliment.
That receiving compliment. I think Aaron talked about it. Jerick McKinnon, we saw him for years as a receiving threat, and then he made some money this offseason. Exactly. So it's very interesting because this whole thing with the running back position and free agency in particular is going to be a cost benefit analysis. Even McKissick earned some money this year with the way he took snaps away from Gibson, as you so thankfully reminded me, and I lost a lot of fantasy football games.
Hashtag fantasy football. That's a good piece, though. Like, people have been mentioning McKissick. I love McKissick, but to use that real quick, Antonio Gibson is a very sweet running back for the Washington the Washington Commanders now. A running back who used to be a wide receiver in college. You would think, oh, that's a 3-down running back, and he's especially going to be on the field on 3rd down, this and that. J.D. McKissick is so good in the pass game that he keeps Gibson off the field on 3rd down, much to Kendall's chagrin with having Antonio Gibson on his fantasy team. So that's a big thing. Like, Kendall, you've hit on it multiple times. There's a lot of guys that we would love to just be able to add easily. Like, it would be awesome if you could just do running backs. We could just talk about Cordero Patterson, but there's price ranges for these guys that are just going to price them right out of the Bills market.
Right. And honestly, McKissick for 3.5, like, it's not a bad value for a guy like that, because he could be that little, running back that is a change up in many ways, because he's quick on top of just, a receiving threat. Like, I just remember him from watching a bunch of Washington film is, you throw an option route to him, you throw a shallow drag to him, he's running away from linebackers at that second level. So he's very interesting. But who's the guy that ultimately you kind of settled in on as a target for the Bills?
So the guy I settled in on was Justin Jackson for the Los Angeles Chargers. I totally forgot that this guy was a free agent. This guy is someone who's honestly been forgotten in the NFL because of his injuries in a lot of ways. He has failed to stay healthy for a consistent period of time. When he gets a lot of work, he does struggle to stay healthy, but that's why I think he could be perfect for the Bills, because what we're asking him to do is be a depth complementary piece. He doesn't need to take a heavy snap share, which hopefully should keep his body healthy. But on top of that, those injury concerns could also diminish his market value, making him a little bit more in reach for the Buffalo Bills. So I think he's kind of that perfect cross section of production and cost. And he's still young. So there's room ahead for him. He's definitely a more comfortable zone runner than gap, but I would argue he's a better gap runner than Chase Edmonds. So that's a plus. He's going to be more in that mold of receiving ability, similar to Edmonds and McKissick, guys like that. Another guy who has good play speed, probably better than his 4.52 40 time. Not crazy where he's going to be eye-popping like Edmonds making plays, but he does have some breakaway ability. He's got sufficient shiftiness. He's all right in terms of elusiveness and agility. He doesn't flash all the time, but he's generally a guy who's going to get what's there and occasionally get more. But I think the thing we didn't hammer home with Edmonds and should be hammered home now with Justin Jackson is both of their abilities to transition from a pass catcher back into a running back. And this is something I think Devin Singletary doesn't do all that well. He's sufficient in this area, but it's something that could be better for him. And it's something I think Justin Jackson and Chase Edmonds do very well. They transition very well back into their running back form and naturally break tackles in the way that running backs do.
Anthony, what are your thoughts on Jackson? I got some of the rushing stats for Jackson here from 2021 on the screen, courtesy of Pro Football Focus. But I want to get your thoughts on Jackson, the runner first, and then obviously as a receiver.
He's someone who, again, fits that complementary mold that we continue to talk about in addressing this class. He, when we were talking about it in the DM in our prep for this episode at the end of last week, he, not a horrible fantasy, chagrin for me, but I had Justin Jackson back-to-back years because I just kept being like, if anything happens to Eckler, Jackson's the guy. And then stuff happened to Eckler, and I was like, here we go. And he just wasn't able to really fully grab on because of injuries to him. And then the Chargers brought in Justin Kelly, and I forget the running back they drafted this past year who ate up snaps as well. And he just
Roundtree.
Oh, there you go. Larry Roundtree. Perfect. Justin Jackson was just one of those guys who, when he was on the field, he flashed and you saw the potential there, but he just wasn't able to stay on the field. Combine that with being in a crowded backfield. I think this is a nice option because this is someone who has a similar skill set to Chase Edmonds, but is not going to break the bank from a financial standpoint. This is somebody closer to the Breida level of contract, but who offers you a skill set that is more sustainable and fits what the Bills offense does. So I think it's a really intriguing name and one that I like.
Yeah, I think he's just another, you nailed it, when you talk about the value of this running back. And, he's always played in a spread scheme, played at Northwestern, played in a spread scheme under a good coach there. And we're going to see some of the film from him here in a second. And, you kind of talked about it, Kendall, of yes, he ran in the zone scheme a lot, in LA, but the way he can cut sets up really well as a gap runner where he can use that, puller on those gap runs, and whether they make contact with the block or not, he can use them to get in and out of cuts against linebackers looking to scrape and fill. So, and out of the backfield, of course, he's not going to be to Eckler's level, but they obviously built a lot of the offense around Eckler's skill set, and he, he had to still step up and play in a lot of those roles and execute a lot of those plays. So I think he's a good complement when we're talking, especially if we're talking like running back 2 or running back for 3 for that matter. So I like that you pulled him and got some of the film up, and he's, again, I think he's just a really good fit for what the Bills do on offense. And I'm going to bring up some of his film here real quick. How many plays did you pick here for him?
Only three.
Okay.
75.
I know. Yeah. Leave that up to me with the tight ends. All right.
Such a deep tight end class.
Yeah. So here's Justin Jackson here on his zone run, right, Kendall?
Yeah, this is him breaking. He thinks he has the outside lane here, and then he just sees a little window there, and it's really that breakaway ability. This is his biggest play of the year. So everyone, please beware. This is the highlight reel. This play is the highlight reel play. But no, it shows good vision and good elusiveness, which isn't something I highlighted in his traits because I didn't think it popped a ton, but it did happen occasionally. And I think that's really what you're paying him to be, that, average guy who can pop when you need him to. But you see him, he sticks his foot in the ground. He sees a cutback lane available, and he shows his ability to jump cut and keep his momentum about him and get his momentum up the field and going. And he breaks away. The other Jackson, JC Jackson, ends up catching him from behind. But you really got to give this to him because this play was not a play that should have gone 65 yards or whatever it went. This is a play where I alluded to, he's a guy that's going to get you what's there and occasionally more. This is the occasionally more. He isn't just going to only get you what's there. He has some more to him. He has some more potential to him. So that's why I wanted to include this play despite the highlight feature.
I love, yes, it's a highlight type play.
This is a quality play.
This is a quality play from this cut right here, the balance. Ooh. So look at the cut right here on Hightower. Keep in mind, a guy looking to take Justin Jackson's head off here. So look at the cut, but then look how he gets back to square one. Yeah. He makes that cut and he gets back to square one with nice footwork. And now he's got his center of gravity back. And now he's reassessing. Okay, I'm past 1, 2, 3, 4, and even 5 defenders right there. Now look what I have back to the middle of the field. And he's able to hit that lane. So this is a very aggressive and explosive cut right here to get back into the alley and get up the field. Really nice work from Jackson here, Ant.
Yeah, you had it there with that pause a minute ago. The way he makes that cut, he turns a negative numbers situation for him into a positive number situation for the Charger offense. Like he should be dead to rights right here. The corner's coming off of Keenan Allen on the outside. He's got 2 defenders right up on him. This is a 2.5 on 1, almost a full 3 on 1. And in just 2 cuts, he changes the math. And that's what you're trying to do in football all the time, right? Like that's the whole reason you bring extra defenders down into the box or bring extra linemen in or pull and change gaps and all that stuff. You're trying to adjust the math. And he single-handedly adjusts the math on that play with a skill set that, again, is one the Bills do not have and is one that is extremely intriguing, especially considering what type of money that he will command on the open market, which is not a lot.
Exactly. Yeah, and here's another, chip type flare route from the running back this time. Jackson here. Kendall, I'll let you talk about what you liked about this play.
I mean, you talked about it earlier where this offense is built around Austin Ekeler and what Austin Ekeler can do out of the backfield as a receiver. And they really don't skip much of a beat when Jackson has to come in. He's obviously not making crazy plays after the catch, but you can see he can still make a guy miss after the catch and get some yards here. The crazy thing about this is you have to understand the confidence Justin Herbert has in his guy to go make the play. This is a 3rd and 10 here, and he's throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage, let alone behind the sticks. He's throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage, and he's trusting his guy to get the first down. Now, Justin Jackson only gets 8 yards out of this, and he only has 1 man to make miss, and, I mean, essentially gets tripped up by him and loses his balance and falls into the extra 4 that turns into the total 8. So it's not a crazy play, but this is where it comes back to this is what we're expecting from Justin Jackson. Not those highlight plays that can happen every now and again, but the consistent receiving ability and ability to get just a little bit more than what's there. That's what you're getting from Justin Jackson.
And what about on this play? I mean, one thing that we saw on the first play from Jackson was on that highlight type run, the zone run, we saw the patience and vision. And this is another one of those plays. And this time on a gap run, he shows a little patience and he kind of knifes through the line of scrimmage here, Kendall.
Yeah, the thing I really liked and why I highlighted him as a better gap runner than Edmonds is it looked like he had better patience to let his blocks develop, and he displayed good good connection of vision to footwork where he sees the blocks developing and then uses his footwork to decisively get that foot in the ground and get uphill or get downhill and get his run going. But yeah, he can see, obviously you want to go where your linemen's backs are pointing. And, the outside shoulders, one's deeper. His left tackle is deeper. His right guard is deeper on the right shoulder. So you go in between, you split the two. It's just a really good understanding of gap running, patience, and vision. So that's why I wanted to include this one as well. Once again, not a highlight play, but it shows there's versatility to his game. He adds something as a runner, not as much as Edmonds adds as a runner, hence the 5.2 versus what Justin Jackson will command. But I think the Bills would get what they would pay for with Justin Jackson. And sorry, I don't have a market value for you thanks to Spot Track.
No, it's all good. He's 100% in their range. Again, especially we're talking RB2, RB3. But let's make a transition here. We're seeing a bunch of comments about some wide receivers that the Bills should target. So, Anthony, you had the task of kind of researching the wide receiver room, some of their stats, some of their contracts, things of that nature, and then obviously some free agent targets. So I will give the floor to you, man. What do you have on the Bills wide receiver group?
I got nothing. Just kidding. So I was surprised that this number was, I guess I shouldn't be considering they have Stephon Diggs, but the Bills are 8th in wide receiver spending at $30.365 million. I was not expecting that. And also, keep in mind with that 1.37 million of it, I texted Greg to confirm this earlier because I couldn't remember why. 1.375 million of that is a placeholder for Manny Sands for his dead cap from the void year that they used it in his contract. So they did some financial cap gymnastics last year. So basically 1.4 of that goes to Manny Sands. But you're looking at a group that I think this is a really interesting one that really hinges on what happens with Cole Beasley, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But, you look at this group and the players under contract, you've got Stephon Diggs under contract this year at $17.9 million, next year a little over 18, and then he's a UFA. You've got Cole Beasley at 7.6 this year, then he's a UFA. And you've got Gabriel Davis at 1.069 million this year, 1.2 million next year, and then he's a UFA. And then you got Marquez Stevenson, Tanner Gentry, Isaiah Hodgins. You've got a position group that has popped and exploded with the addition of Stephon Diggs. But long term, this is a very interesting play for this group. We saw the emergence of Gabriel Davis this past year in, conjunction with Stephon Diggs, who's the wide receiver one. I know Diggs is a UFA in 2 more years. We expect an extension to get done for him this year. 1, to keep him in Buffalo. 2, to make cap space. We detailed how to make that very move in the salary cap spectacular this past Friday. # nice plug. But this is a very interesting group, and we need players that are going to come into this group and make an impact in 2022, but also potentially for the long term, given the roster and the construction. And there's not a lot of solid answers in this group aside from Diggs and Gabriel Davis. We could be sitting here, I doubt it, but we could be sitting here a month and a half from now and Cole Beasley's not on this roster anymore. And then it's all of a sudden, what does this position group look like?
Yeah. I love that point because, like many positions this year, the team, Brandon Beane and McDermott and the guys have an opportunity to kind of tweak their positions, especially we're talking wide receiver. You talked about Beasley and, his status and, maybe I know you guys talked about maybe approaching him to kind of take a pay cut. There are so many different options when it comes to this wide receiver room, but we also have to think there's a new offensive coordinator. Yes, he may be running the same system, but does Dorsey's system have that small slot receiver like Cole Beasley as a primary guy in this offense? Again, Cole Beasley's still really good. People are, they're doubting his skill set from, just a numbers perspective because they're just looking at numbers and, they're not as popping as the year before, especially when we talk about man and zone splits and those things. But he's obviously been a really big piece to Josh Allen's career and this offense. So, but going forward, we don't know what Dorsey wants to run. We don't know if the Bills want to shift from an 11 personnel to a 12 personnel to a 21 personnel type. We don't know any of that stuff. So all we can go off is like, hey, who's under contract? And as Anthony said, these are the guys that they have under contract. So Anthony, what about, what are they trying to add to the room? So hypothetically, if those guys are back, the guys that are under contract and thinking long-term and short-term, what type of guys are they looking for when it comes to that position?
So, as I alluded to, a lot of this really hinges on what happens with Cole Beasley. If Cole Beasley is back, I think you have a solid 3 that are lined up at the top. You've got Stephon Diggs, you've got Gabriel Davis, you've got Cole Beasley. And I'm glad you touched on Cole Beasley. He was banged up a bit this past year with the rib injury. He finished the year strong. He did not lose a step towards the end of the year like some people wanted to claim or state. He's very effective against zone and very effective against man coverage. He's still cooking dudes in routes. Cole Beasley is still a tremendous slot receiver who was an all-pro in 2020. So if he's back, you're looking at him as your slot guy, basically your number 3 wide receiver. And if that's the case, okay, what can we do for depth? What are we doing for wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5? In that case, I think you're looking for somebody who can flex back and forth between the outside and the inside, someone who offers you positional versatility, whether on offense or maybe some added special teams bonus as well, somebody who can get the job done in several ways and add a dynamic to the starting, top 3 that the Bills would already have. If Cole Beasley does not return, that really shakes everything up because then the only real answers you have or concrete plans for this year and really going forward are Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis. If Cole Beasley leaves, your wide receiver group is Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis, Marquez Stevenson, Tanner Gentry, and Isaiah Hodgins. A lot of questions. So then all of a sudden I think, okay, what's going to happen in free agency or a lot of quality receivers in the draft? You now all of a sudden switch and wide receiver becomes a priority in round 1. If Cole Beasley doesn't come back, then you're not looking for a depth guy. You're not looking for a complementary, versatile, jack of all trades piece. You are looking for whatever Ken Dorsey wants as his wide receiver 3. So if it is that slot receiver guy in the Cole Beasley mold, that's what they're going to go get. If it's someone with a little more boundary capability or someone who can get more vertical and maybe run some more intermediate to deep routes with some long speed, that's what they'll target. But a lot of it, Erik, to your point, is going to hinge on 2 things. 1, what does Ken Dorsey want for that position? And 2, what happens with Cole Beasley? And then it's a domino effect from there.
Yeah, Kendall, I want to get your thoughts on the wide receiver position. Obviously, you do a lot of scouting for the draft and whatnot, and you heard Anthony kind of talk about that. I honestly, when we talk about the receivers, especially the one receiver Braxton Berrios later in the film room when we get to the film, I would rather honestly pay. I would honestly rather draft a wide receiver high than pay a guy like Berrios, because I think there's some limitation to Berrios' game in many ways that you see, the Cole Beasley type. Cole Beasley is a slot guy. Braxton Berrios is a slot guy. And if rather than pay a guy like Berrios $6-7 million, I would rather just draft a wide receiver high. So I want to get your thoughts on that approach, and also, just the wide receiver group altogether. Because as we can see on some of these stats from Sports Info Solutions, yes, Cole Beasley, he didn't lose a step. There's no doubt about that, but he didn't have as much success, especially when we're talking touchdowns in that red zone area. So kind of elaborate on Cole Beasley and the wide receiver group.
Yeah, no, I would just be echoing a lot of stuff when talking about our wide receiver group as it stands right now. There's just a lot of question marks in terms of beyond that top half, because it is very top heavy. It is, and they're very efficient at the top, but you need to have some depth behind it. And obviously, like you said, Ant, a lot of this depends on what the future is with Cole Beasley. But Erik, I absolutely agree with the idea of trying to attack this in the draft. I think there are ways to attack this in free agency, and I think the guys that we're talking about are definitely realistic options. But I think there is something to be said about the potential that we can get out of the draft versus overpaying for someone who, yes, they're a known commodity, but they're known at that current value, and they're likely not going to climb past that current value. That's kind of why they're hitting free agency, because the team isn't willing to pony up for that market value. Right. So that's why they're hitting it, and that's kind of why people get paid in free agency. So I think my preferred method to inject some talent into this position is through the draft, but you can't discount what Brandon Beane likes to do in terms of padding these position rooms via free agency to make sure the draft is easier on him.
Yeah, so we're going to get into some of the film here. I know a bunch of the comments are coming in, but I want to get to some of the film before we fall behind. Anthony, who are we starting off with today?
We're going to start with Mr. Braxton Berrios. I wanted to highlight something in the chat real quick, though. Christian Kirk is not better than Cole Beasley. I don't know what we're doing. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? First person, yeah, Braxton Berrios. There he is, a Miami guy. Shout out to the U. I want to put out a little disclaimer with Braxton Berrios. Erik, you hit on it a little bit. I picked him for two reasons. One, I do like his game, but two, he has been a buzzword in and of himself this entire offseason already. There were people talking about two people to replace Cole Beasley in the conversation amongst Bills fans all during the year. Braxton Berrios and Hunter Renfrow. I don't know if it's the demographic similarities or the fact that they have numbers in the teens or whatever, but that name has been thrown out so much. Braxton Berrios is a good player, right? He is not Cole Beasley. He is not the route runner that Cole Beasley is. He does not have the understanding of leveraging space that Cole Beasley has. Berrios is a fun player who offers versatility. And, to RJ's comment down there, he says Berrios is, greater than Beasley because he frees up 3 roster spots alone. But what is his true value in the offensive role? And also, if he's going to be the main returner, as we've seen, Sean McDermott doesn't like to really use his returner in anything but that returner role. Yeah. So if you're signing him, he may be 3 roster spots in 1 or 2 at the least, but what's the real value there? But, you get Braxton Berrios. First thing, I don't care that's a special teams thing, but he was first team All-Pro for his kick return duties this past year, which is a tremendous accomplishment for him. 30.4 yards per return, which was first in the league. He's athletic. He's strong. He fights through contact in his routes, which he needs to because his route tree is somewhat limited and he struggles getting off man coverage, especially press man. When he's not lined up in the slot and he gets out wide and he doesn't have that natural cushion that the slot presents to him, he struggles to get off a press and he struggles to get off a man, but he will fight through contact with his strength. He's a willing blocker in the run game, gives good effort. He's somewhat effective as well. I got his snaps by alignment there from 2021, 284 in the slot, 97 out wide, which breaks down to his percentage. He was in the slot 74.2% of the time and out wide 24% of the time. You're going to see him a lot in those jet sweeps, orbit motions, pop passes, reverses. They got him the ball in a variety of ways. And he really excelled at that at different times. And he functions in the short to low intermediate. As I mentioned, he's better in zone versus man. And he's somebody who, you know, when you're looking at his target share and what he does, 45% of his targets come 0 to 9 yards, 28.3% of his targets come behind the line of scrimmage, and 21.7% come 10 to 19 yards. And if you're doing your math at home, that means only 5% of his targets have come 20 yards or deeper. So this is not a guy who's going to stretch the field. He very much works in that short to low intermediate in terms of where he's going to go, where he's going to attack. And Erik, you know, you threw some nice EPA numbers, expected points added, into our chat just now. So Beasley from the slot, his EPA 6.21. Braxton Berrios' EPA from the slot 0.38. For those of you doing the math at home, again, a large difference. This continues to connect to our theme of Cole Beasley being a bit underappreciated. Braxton Berrios is a good receiver. He's fun, but he's not Cole Beasley, just to kind of set that tone for this as we start to dive in here.
Yeah, let's get to the film on him because, again, I think, a lot of Bills fans, it's like every day in our mentions about, you know, Berrios. And again, he's a nice player, but he has not done and cannot do some of the things that Cole Beasley does. And maybe he will eventually, you know, who knows? But he's not at that point right now, right, Ant?
No, he's not. And again, I don't even think that's necessarily a slight against him. Cole Beasley has been one of the best route runners in football for a long time. I know somebody mentioned his time in Dallas. He was great with his routes in Dallas, and he excelled even further in Buffalo. You also saw the jump in Isaiah McKenzie's route running ability because of him explicitly stating himself, him working with Cole Beasley. So Beasley's route running is top notch, and he got an all-pro vote in 2020 as a slot receiver, as an exclusive slot receiver. That's a big thing. This first play we're going to see here from Braxton Berrios. So he's out wide here. This is a nice job from him. He's got press man from Jamel Dean right in front of him, and he's going to fight through the contact. And it's a good job by him. He gets held at the top of this route. He fights through. Zach Wilson actually makes a good throw. He gets low, a nice hands catch, which is something that is consistent in Berrios. He's good at the catch point. He's strong at the catch point. He's got strong hands. He's strong overall. He's good at making those physical catches. I highlighted it here and stopped it. He's almost getting horse collar tackle on this play. Like, he gets grabbed earlier in this route and he gets grabbed from the top, but look how he fights through, continues to drive, is able to shield from the defender a little bit. And again, great ball from Zach Wilson, but a nice athletic, tough catch from Berrios. So what he lacks in polish, what he lacks in refinement, he makes up for with his athleticism and his will. And this is an example of that on this play.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on this play, Kendall, and talking about Berrios? Because, yes, I like his ability to work through contact and make the catch as a contested catch. But one could argue that this was a better throw than actual catch on the other end.
Yeah, that's a really good point of framing it, because he does struggle, like you said, to get off this press coverage here. And there's really no separation here. Yes, there's a little bit of a hold, but there isn't much separation on the stem or on the break after the stem. And it really takes a good throw and obviously a good recovery to the throw to make the catch. So, I mean, it takes two to tango here, but without that throw, that catch isn't being made. So, yes, he's good. He's showing that he can win against man, but he's showing how slim that margin of winning is in man, because it took a lot to win for him.
Yes, and that's a huge point. Like, we've seen Cole Beasley be a very QB-friendly wide receiver with how he wins at the line of scrimmage or how he's able to separate against zone and man. That's something that Berrios struggles with at times. And again, he has to make up for it in different ways, which he can, but it's not exactly sustainable over and over again. Here, we have another play in that same game against Tampa Bay. Berrios is in the slot this time, where He's much more comfortable. And this is the play that's an example of the athleticism you get with Braxton Berrios. I think this is one that a lot of fans point to. They see the highlight of it and they're like, oh, let's go get this guy. Like, he runs the speed out here. It's not the best route in the world, but he's able to separate enough, gets a good ball from Zach Wilson, but it's the finish to the catch, right? He gets it, he turns, he stays in bounds, and he does the move that I feel like people didn't used to do in the 90s and 2000s. And now it seems like everybody is able to jump from like the 3-yard line and angle it and touch the pylon. Like, it's just super common nowadays, but it's still a really nice play. Like, again, I picked this one in the play before to really put those things together. And because I think it shows him in both lights. Like, he's not the most polished, he's not the most refined, but what he lacks in polish and refinement, he's able to make up with his athleticism and his physical ability. So again, fights through contact, gets out on that speed route. He runs a lot of speed routes. A majority of his routes are speed outs, hooks, stuff in the 5 to 7 yard range. Like, this is a very, whether it's the Jets offense or Berrios himself, this is a very common staple for him in his route tree, running this speed out over and over and over again. This time he runs it, gets the ball. And again, it's a nice job him being able to get upfield, turn it in, and toe tap the pylon a little bit there.
Yeah, I like it. I don't know what the Bucs were doing on this play, to be honest, as far as the defense goes. Looks like
they had a rough game. They almost lost to the Jets. Like, I don't think they know what they were doing.
This looks like, some version of cover 3. Everyone else is zoned up to the top of the screen, but for some reason they're having this guy play with inside leverage, and maybe they're in man coverage. It's just weird leverage right here. You're giving this guy the outside. So, I mean, that's my little footnote, but I like it. I like the finish. I mean, good place ball for the guy Berrios to catch it and run. And as you said, that speed cut and then the speed cut to get up the field for the 6 points. It was a good route. I mean, nothing crazy, but using him in the red zone from the slot, like, you're going to get those matchups on those safeties. If the defense wants to play that single high, you're going to get a safety out there with him, and he's gonna win. That's what you get. That's what you expect from your slot receiver here. And here's another play against who's this, against the Patriots this time?
Yes, this is against the Patriots in week 2. A little caveat with this one. This is towards the end of the game when it's 22-6 New England, so they're giving up some stuff. There's like 3 minutes left in this game, but Berrios is highlighted in that bunch. He's the top man in the bunch. Again, he's got some space to work with. This one's nice. Again, another nice throw by Zach Wilson. Keep an eye out that from Bills fans in the future. But this one is an example of Berrios getting vertical.
It's nice.
But the finish is real nice. The toe tap, the focus, the concentration. You see the space he had to work with there and how he gets down. The end zone angle really shows this one nice. Wilson drops it in the bucket, but you can see Berrios line it up. He's got the awareness and the athleticism to, look at that. Get that toe tap, secure the ball. He gets hit right as he makes the catch. Contact doesn't phase him, hangs onto the ball, toe taps on a nice corner route here. This was one of the best non-physical plays from Berrios in the 3 full games that I watched from him. This is a nice technical wide receiver play. And it highlights, again, he's got some pieces to his game, but he's just not that technical piece that a lot of people, I think that he is or that he can be, at least not right now.
Yeah, I love how he throttles down as he's getting close to the boundary. Obviously, really good boundary awareness with the ball dropping in. He's looking up over his left shoulder. You can kind of see that the sun is going from left to right on the screen. The shadows on the right side of the body. So he's kind of staring, back towards the quarterback, also having that sun kind of on the left side of his, I'm sure of his helmet and his eyes. So knowing that boundary awareness, and he even has a chance to kind of look down right before he catches it. Smash concept versus the Patriots. Obviously, a really good defense with McCourty coming full blow right at him, Kendall. So really nice play from Berrios on this.
Yeah, I think the nice part about this play is you're starting to see a little bit more route running nuance. Yeah. And I think that's really the thing we all want from our slot receiver, but it's not something that, from what I'm gathering from you, Ant, it's not something that was clearly apparent in most of his tape, and it's something that he still needs to develop. So that's the reason I'm more on the track of, maybe we draft a guy and develop him than pay a guy and develop him, because it's just not cost effective.
All right, so
if one last piece, his market value as of right now is $5.9 million. I could see this going a variety of ways based on looking at the tape. he's not somebody who I'm going to pay $6 million a year.
Yeah.
Maybe some other team will because they think he can be their slot guy and their all-pro kick returner guy. And I recognize the value in that. And again, if you give him the ball and some jet sweeps and tosses and things like that, maybe that works out. But I'm not going to give him $6 million. If he comes in under, I think it's a fun option. Or maybe there's a team that's going to cash in and think, we got money to spend. We like what we saw on the tape. Let's give him 7 or 8 or 9 million a year. He's an intriguing name. I picked him more because of Billsmafia's been talking about him so much. I don't think it's necessarily a realistic option of him coming to the team, even if, because here's how I want to phrase it. If Beasley stays, Berrios is not coming because of what his price is going to be and what his skill set is. If Beasley's gone, exactly what both of you have said, we have to pivot towards the draft in order to replace that need because we're not going to on the open market.
Right. And to kind of transition to the next target here in free agency, it's a guy that I think all of us, collectively really like. And, I feel like he's the type of guy that just isn't just value from a money sense, but also from the sense of, he actually offers that versatility. And we're not just talking about as a slot receiver and as a returner like Berrios. We're talking about inside, outside versatility, some quickness and speed, and also as a returner. So the Chiefs wide receiver, Byron Pringle, is a guy that we're talking about. And honestly, I'm going to bring up these next-gen stats. If you look at some of the separation stats for this guy, he's number 3 right here at 4.1 as far as next-gen stats for separation in 2021. So a guy that was kind of buried in the depth chart in Kansas City. But I want to hear your thoughts about Pringle, his game, his stats, and what you found on film.
He was in this whole group of looking at the wide receivers. I know a lot of people have been commenting from the beginning with Devontae Adams and Chris Godwin and Allen Robinson and all these guys. And I just don't think it's realistic. Pringle is one that I think is very realistic. His market value right now is $2.3 million. He's 28 years old. He's had some burn in Kansas City. He really rounded out the group. The 4 that I really wanted to look at for this episode were Berrios, Pringle, Deontay Harris from New Orleans, who I like a lot. His market value is 9.3. There's a chance he might get paid. I also like Demarcus Robinson, another Chief. I also looked at Cedric Wilson from the Dallas Cowboys, but I was a little disappointed in Cedric Wilson. I thought I'd like his tape more. Randy, I see your comment that says Michael Gallup. I think Dallas is really going to try and keep Gallup, or even if they don't, he is sweet and he's going to get paid. But you mentioned with Pringle, he's got that outside versatility in 2021. And it's nice to see it reflected in the actual numbers. 396 snaps in the slot, 306 out wide. That's really good versatility. He also had 39 kick returns with a 24.8 yards per return average, which, to me, again, if Cole Beasley stays, this is the type of guy they target, right? A guy who could be wide receiver 4, who can also play special teams. He can also throw himself out there in the gunner role on punt coverage, which is nice. What's also nice to see is his route running. He runs crisp, hard routes. They have snap. They have purpose. He's not rounding out his cuts when he runs stop routes or when he runs ins. They're hard. They're crisp. He runs everything at full speed. It's nice to see. He also goes and gets the ball with his hands and his body. He's bigger than you think. He doesn't look 6'2", 205 pounds on film. I was surprised. He's listed an inch taller than Demarcus Robinson for the Chiefs, who's usually their boundary guy who looks a lot bigger.
He's also a free agent too, I believe, right?
Yes,
so he's another guy they could probably throw in there as well.
1,000%. I watched film for both of them. I like Pringle's skill set more than Robinson's. Plus, his name is more fun to say because Pringles are a snack, and every time he does something good, we can just, once you pop, you just can't stop type of thing. And he's
got
also
it all set up already.
I got it all set up. I just got notes for days on catchphrases. He also offers run after catch ability. He's good off script, like Chase Edmonds was earlier in this episode that we talked about. He's good at being QB friendly, and he's comfortable working the soft spots in the short to intermediate area. His average depth of target is 10.5 yards, but majority of his targets, 50% of them come in that 0 to 9 yard range, but he's diverse. 50% of those targets, like I mentioned, in the 0 to 9 yard range, 24.3%, 10 to 19, and then 18.9%, 20 yards or more. And his average depth of target on those targets, 20 yards or more, was 27.3. So he's a guy that works the short to intermediate area, but he can get vertical, whether from the slot or from the outside. Combined with the technical piece and his market value, he's someone who I really, really like as a complete package with all those things, on field and money and monetary value off of it. Someone who I really like as a fit for the Bills.
Yeah, real quick. So before we get to the film, Kendall, do you have anything to add on Pringle? Obviously, I got, again, a guy that was buried on the depth chart. We have some comments saying, yeah, the Chiefs will probably bring him back. Chiefs have a lot of big decisions on their hands, a lot of top-heavy decisions, and wide receiver 4 and an offense and under a play caller like Bieniemy or Andy Reid for that matter. I'm sure wide receiver 4, as good as Pringle is, and including the special teams aspect, he's probably not one of the top priorities for them.
No, but the thing that should be emphasized is how much he took away from someone like Mecole Hardman that we thought was really going to develop for the Chiefs. And we see Pringle kind of usurp a lot of that production and take it away from Hardman. So really a lot of that speed, that playmaking, the return aspect, all of that versatility is what I want to emphasize. And then the fact that he actually did become more of a favorite to Mahomes than someone like Hardman, who we actually came to fear from obviously last postseason and last season in general. So yeah, I'm very intrigued with Pringle from a value standpoint and a versatility standpoint.
Yeah, and it seems like, Anthony, as we watch this play, it seems like when the Chiefs played the Bills and they got into the red zone, low red zone, somehow Mahomes was always finding Pringle like he does on this play.
Yeah, I absolutely hate it. This pains me. Both of these clips, everyone. Spoiler for everybody watching. Both clips for Byron Pringle are against the Bills, so it's going to hurt a little bit. And to piggyback on Kendall's point, he had a 49% snap rate in 2021, which I don't think people would guess given Tyreek Hill and Mecole Hardman and Demarcus Robinson and their weapons out there. This red zone route is really nice. To me, he wins here on this speed out. He separates from Wallace, and he's got it. Like you see, He's physical with it, runs the route, gains some depth. Mahomes isn't looking his way, right? Also, shout out to Jerry Hughes for recognizing the foolish little shovel attempt that the Chiefs are trying to run here. But I mean, Jerry Hughes is terrible, says everybody who watches broadcast snaps. Nice route from Pringle. He wins here, right? Mahomes isn't able to get him the ball. So what does Pringle do? He wins again. Going into that point I made earlier of being able to function off script. Look how he recognizes where his quarterback is. He reroutes, understands, okay, where's Mahomes? There he is. Where do I need to go to get myself open? Gets to that spot. Mahomes puts the ball up. And again, another point, what does he do? He doesn't wait for the ball to come to him. He doesn't keep, backtracking or backpedaling towards the boundary. He goes up. He gets this ball. He literally jumps up, attacks the ball with his hands, high points the football. You see him. This end zone angle is nice. He just comes out of the picture. Mahomes finds him. Mahomes probably could have even led him a little more and taken advantage of how open Pringle was, going off script. But he puts it in a spot. Pringle attacks it, separates.
Strong hands.
Yes, he is very strong at the catch point, and he uses his body to get in between the ball and Levi, catches it with his hands. It's a nice job of him, again, winning twice. He wins initially off the route, which is fantastic. But what happens when things kind of, go to crap a little bit? He reroutes, figures out what to do, and help out his QB, which is something he does regularly.
Yeah, and so we fast forward now to the divisional game, and I'll let you take over here on what happened on this play. This time in the slot, again, in the low red zone, though. This is what's interesting with Pringle is, you talked about his play speed versus his straight line speed and, his size and everything, his inside-out versatility and ability to play outside of script on that last play. But this one, again, finding ways to get open for his quarterback, and somehow Mahomes just finds him again, this time towards the back of the end zone.
This route is, I picked this one, and Erik, I know I realized after I picked it, you had also posted a video about it, or a clip of it on Twitter. This route is filthy. Like, I almost don't even want to speak with it. You see him set it up. Where am I going? Where am I going? Hard plant, pop across Micah Hyde's face. And again, this is against a safety who's an all-pro, who is a former slot corner. Like, Micah Hyde is no slouch. Like, I recognize he's not a burner, but this isn't a dude that gets beat regularly. Look how much separation there is. for Byron Pringle. And look what you just X'd out. There's nobody open on this route for Kansas City. And this is a 7-7 ball game. Mahomes needs somebody to try and find in this divisional round that I still don't want to watch because it makes me want to throw up. And Pringle's that guy because of his ability to win at the line. And this is something that, to compare to the first person who I highlighted, this isn't something you see from Braxton Berrios. This is something more that you see from Cole Beasley, that ability to win one-on-one and separate. And then what's nice is he wins at the line, and then he has the speed to continue to go across and create further separation. Mahomes doesn't put this ball in a great spot. Pringle has to slow up. What does he do again? He goes up, he high points the football, he makes a quarterback-friendly play. As Mahomes gets pressured there, he's just trying to put it up. That's also a sign, right, of a good receiver. Mahomes has the confidence to be like, let me throw it up to this guy. Let me throw it up to this guy and let him make a play. And credit to Pringle, he does. He beats an all-pro safety at the line of scrimmage, and then once the ball is in the air, this is a nice – if you're rocking this, if you're the Buffalo Bills and this is your fourth wide receiver, like that's a nice thing to have. Somebody that inside-outside versatility with some physical traits, with some technicality to his game as well. He can win outside. He can win inside. He understands how to help his quarterback out. I really like the value and the play that Byron Pringle represents all in one package.
This play really epitomizes him as a player, his role in that offense. He's very much like Gabriel Davis is for Josh Allen as that wide receiver 4. A lot of times in the red zone, Josh Allen's looking to Gabriel Davis to make these clutch catches in those tough situations, in those down and distances like here, 3rd and 2. He trusts the mental toughness of Byron Pringle, much like Josh Allen trusts Gabriel Davis's mental toughness in these situations, in these crucial, again, 3rd, 4th downs in the red zone, right, Kendall?
Yeah, they really do value that. And the thing that I really love about this play is obviously the strong hands again. I mean, the 2 plays in a row, just showing how strong he is at that catch point. But also the way he stems this route against inside leverage from Micah Hyde is so sick. The way he sees Micah is on his inside, and he understands how hard he has to plant on that left foot to get Micah Hyde to bite on this. It's just a wonderfully done release package. And then, and like you said, the ability to separate at the break point and then also continue that separation because he has good speed is huge for your quarterback. And isn't it funny how all these guys we've mentioned are good at, creating plays off script for their quarterbacks, are all playing with improvising quarterbacks?
It's interesting. It's almost like that's a huge part of the top-notch quarterbacks in today's NFL. Interesting. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Yeah, Hyde barely gets a hand on Pringle on that play. No. And as much as it hurts my heart to, pick it out, that's what's nice about that again is the way he won, but who he won against. He's winning against a quality opponent, which, bodes well for his sustainability going forward.
Yeah, and to kind of wrap this up, Walter Scala says we were ranked last in the playoffs in Yak. 20th, the Chiefs, Bucks, Packers, Bengals, Rams were ranked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 10 respectively. I've seen this talked about a lot, and there is some truth inside of that, in that stat and those numbers. But it's also Yak is also it's a scheme thing. It's not necessarily a talent thing. Again, if the Bills were able to rack up 400, 500 yards in the screen game, that's a different number. That's a different ranking than you would get. The lack of a screen game, we can all agree, I think, that the Bills need to be better in the screen game, make things easier for their quarterback by augmenting the screen game, especially as we talked about with Edmonds and Jackson, like getting the ball to running backs on those screens in positive matchups versus safeties and linebackers. But those teams that you mentioned, they're very good screen teams. And that will add a lot of yardage to that Yak number in the end. So I think I like your point. But how you get to that, how you get to the Yak is really the process that we talked about in this episode. But I understand why people are kind of equating those things in the offense. But with that said, now let's shift to the best position of all three of these.
The sexiest group, the sexiest group of this episode. This super, super top heavy, loaded tight end free agent class. Ooh, tell them about it, Erik. Yeah, tell them how much you loved scouting this group.
The sarcasm. We can pick it up in video. not all the time on Twitter, according to Anthony's Twitter today. A lot of people didn't pick up on some of the sarcasm.
So many people came at me for that tweet and thought I was serious. Like,
how do they not know by now with your tweets that you're being sarcastic at least 3/4 of the time?
Yeah,
disappointed.
So, yeah, I had the tight ends, and of course we saved that for last, but mainly because I wanted to get the good stuff out of the way. The tight end group is one that I think is rather boring from a sense of when we're evaluating the Bills, the Bills room right now and the guys that they have. Right now, Dawson Knox is basically it. And we saw that throughout all of last season and how many tight ends they were going to dress and whatnot. Right now, the Bills have 4.4, just over 4.4 million attributed to the tight end room. Again, I said it offline prior. I think that Gilliam is kind of a tight end, H-back, hybrid, fullback type of guy. So I think you could kind of throw him in there, especially when the Bills wanted to run some of those 21 personnel, 12 personnel type personnel groupings. But right now, the positional spending is rather low at 24th overall. But, of course, Dawson Knox's payday is right around the corner, and it's well-deserved. We've, found out this past season that, he had improved. And I'm not just talking from the stats. We saw his blocking come, hands down was probably his biggest improvement, especially when we talk about inline. He's always been able to hit some of those blocks out in space on the jet sweeps for McKenzie, some of those pitches. But when we saw him in line this year, I thought his blocking really set the tone for not just the pin and pull runs on the front side on some of those down blocks or those pin blocks on some crack tosses. But again, inline, base blocks, one-on-one with defensive ends. We saw him create some displacement. I mean, one play that comes to mind is against the Patriots, blocking their edge players just right down this, creating that displacement in favor of the offense. So right now, Dawson Knox is it. He's due $2.745 million, but after this year, he's unrestricted. Tommy Sweeney, $989,000 after this year, unrestricted. And then you have Quentin Morris, who really didn't play at all last year at $705,000. But so the tight end room, I think when you're talking personnel grouping and maybe what they want to do in offense, yes, you can add a guy there, whether that's through the draft or free agency. And we're going to talk about some of those free agent targets. But I think, first of all, they're committed to Knox. I think they do get a contract done for him. But they do need some depth. I mean, if Knox were to go down, he's had some minor injuries here and there where he missed some time. Can Tommy Sweeney be that guy? I don't know. He hasn't shown that he could, fill in for Knox in the same way that the Bills like to use their tight ends on RPOs, those short routes. And really, he is their yak guy. We talked about, that with the wide receiver group. He is probably their best guy after the catch. So if he goes down, is Sweeney that guy? No. Is Morris that guy? Probably not. But I think from a positional standpoint, yes, they need to start thinking about, who's tight end 2, who's tight end 3. More importantly, can those guys play special teams? Because they have to do that. So we look at Knox's snap percentage last year, 76.5% of the snaps. So he got a bulk of the run here at tight end. Sweeney only got 22.3% of the snap rate, according to Football Outsiders. And he was able, Knox overall was able to, I mean, this is really a Knox segment because again, he was the guy for the Bills offense last year that stepped up. 56 receptions, 685 yards, which was ranked 11th, but 11 touchdowns last year, which is obviously Dable really schemed up the tight ends really well his entire time, with the Bills. And last year it just went up another level. 11 touchdowns for Knox was number 2 behind Travis Kelce's 12. So obviously a go-to guy for
and he
Josh
missed some
Allen.
time with that injury.
Yeah. And so that's the scary thing. When you look at some of the advanced stats from Football Outsiders, his DYAR was 10th, DVOA was 8th, EPA 25.85, which was 6th for tight ends, EPA per target 0.37, which was 3rd. Used inline 37.6% of the time, which was the lowest in his career. But they use them all over the place, so they use them all over the place. And the thing is, like, for the Bills, they used, maybe he wasn't right off the tackle, but he would slide over a couple extra yards as kind of like a nasty alignment. So there's some gray area to that stat. Obviously, Josh Allen's guy in the intermediate area, in that short area over the middle. And really, guys, just a mismatch, whether it's zone or man coverage, right, Anthony?
That's what was so exciting when it comes to breaking down Dawson Knox in 2021, to compare him to a tight end that Bills fans know, Rob Gronkowski. His receiving ability gets talked about all the time, but Rob Gronkowski is a fantastic blocker. Like, that's what made him such a dual threat. We saw flashes of that from Dawson Knox this past year, and he became a mismatch in the passing game against linebackers and, with his speed and agility, but then also against smaller defenders because of his size and his athleticism. But then you started adding in how successful he was in blocking. Then he became a mismatch opportunity for defenses as a whole because he started selling run action and then leaking out into all these pass routes. He really became a dynamic weapon for this Bills offense. And I'm going to connect this to something from the beginning. When we talked about the running backs, Dawson Knox is an example of what mismatches can do. He's somebody that you have to account for on the defense, because if you don't account for it in the right way, he'll take advantage of one-on-one opportunities based on his skill set and how he's used in this offense. And he just really had a strong year and was a mismatch in terms of his receiving play, but also what he was able to do in terms of run blocking as well.
And before I get to the free agent targets, Kendall, I want to hear your thoughts on Dawson Knox and his projection going forward with Ken Dorsey as a coordinator.
I mean, I'm beyond excited. The development that he showed this past year was awesome. Obviously, Greg talked about how hope isn't a plan and all that stuff, but when it pans out, it's pretty nice. It's a nice thing to have to hang your hat on. Hopefully that extension gets done. But the thing that I feel like he made the biggest stride with this year is that route running aspect, where I think he talked about it I think it was a postseason press conference. He said, sometimes I learned this, you can run a route too quickly. And this whole year, he was doing such a great job of running routes quickly against man to obviously create separation, but in zone, running routes slow enough to find the pocket to create an open window for Josh Allen to throw through. So I just thought his understanding of the game as a blocker and a pass catcher oh my God, it went up so well.
Yeah, and I love that point about, he had talked about, when to get open for his quarterback. And to me, that also speaks to his, how the game's slowing down for him and the processing. You got to know the coverage in order for, to when you're going to be open for your quarterback and how he works through the progressions. You got to know the coverage there. And I think obviously that played a big part of it. So when we talk about, free agent targets at the tight end position, again, I don't think they are going to splurge at the position. So you're going to hear a lot of names out there. You're going to hear like Gerald Everett, who obviously a lot of Bills fans wanted a couple years ago. In 2021, he had a 1-year, $6 million deal. I don't think the Bills want to pay that. There's no value AAV wise for Spot Rack right now on him, but based on his contract last year, I don't see the Bills wanting to spend anywhere near that for essentially a tight end 2 or 3. Evan Ingram's another name that's going to be out there, but his market is 6.7 AAV. David Njoku market 6.7 AAV. So just a few names that you're going to hear thrown around there that I don't think the Bills are really going to, put money on this offseason when you talk about, how they're up against the cap and how they would have to do some restructures and things like that. But one of the names mentioned in the chat room is Mo Alley Cox. Would it be a good sign? Yeah, he's a value guy. He's a guy that I watched. He didn't make the cut for this episode, but mainly because he's a little clunky. He's a good blocker, don't get me wrong. But again, we got to have at least a little athleticism when you talk about, and he's not that he's not athletic. Don't take it there, guys. But, again, if Knox were to go down, can he be a quasi tight end? I don't think so. I think even talking with my guy, Zach Hicks, who covers the Colts. He's like, dude, he can do the chips, the nudge blocks, and then and become an underneath hook to curl guy. He's not a guy that's going to be working the intermediate area consistently. So along those lines that, again, how Knox is used. But the guys that I did kind of dive into, first is going to be a former Seahawk and Will Dissly, who a few years ago, really good tight end. A guy that I think fits schematically. First of all, he played last year in the Seahawks offense under Shane Waldron, who was on the LA Rams a few years ago. Same exact offense, same exact playing style, same exact techniques when it comes to blocking and running some of those routes. But more importantly, again, special teams. He played special teams 38.9% last year. Really long arms, 6'3", 2.5", but has really long arms to wash down defensive ends and defensive linemen. Really good grip. You'll see some of the blocks here, whether it's run or pass. He's able to latch on, play with good leverage, whether he's blocking for the passing game or the running game. And when he's got the ball in his hands, he's not going to be like a Knox where he's going to be breaking a lot of tackles. But in some of these plays, he knows how to use that offhand and whether it's throw a guy by or a light stiff arm from a distance with his arm length. He's able to do that. And I just like his mental processing mostly in the run game as a blocker. He's got the size and technique when it comes to blocking, but his ability to assess, hey, the defensive end has counter responsibilities on a possible bootleg. I'm not going to block him. I'm going to let the quarterback block him on that fake bootleg. As he carries that out, I'm going to move to the next level, pick up the safety or pick up the linebacker. Really important trait when you're talking about, Aaron Kromer in this offense and, maybe what they're going to be doing in the offensive game. But I'll throw this to you guys, whoever wants to open up, maybe some of your quick thoughts on Dissly and, how much that scheme, playing in that scheme, may help him when it comes to Ken Dorsey, the young offensive play caller. But more importantly, again, some of Kromer's techniques kind of popped up and we talked about his techniques last week. Some of those techniques in the blocking game, especially the run game, really showed up with Dissly.
Go ahead, Kendall.
I mean, the big thing with Dissly and everything that you were saying about him is just a lot of like average stuff with processing and assessing game responsibilities. Stuff like that is exactly what you want to hear for a tight end too. You're not exactly expecting this guy to beat worlds or anything as tight end one, but if he has to come in and play tight end one, if Knox gets hurt, can he do his job? Can he make plays in the run game like this, get that long arm out there, get a chip on Watt, and then get to the next level? All that stuff, you want to see him get through plays, doing the right thing, not necessarily overpowering people. And I think that's why you ended up picking him, because he's one of those guys that can do his job.
Yeah, I love this. Anthony, real quick, like look at TJ Watt, what he's doing. He's trying to get a beat on the call here and how they're going to block this up. So you see him come inside right there, and Dish is like, okay, is he going to align there? If he is, I need to cut my split. So little things he picks up on. He's like, okay, well, now he's not. Okay, I need to assess. Do I block him, TJ Watt, or do I assume that, hey, my quarterback, his action is really going to keep this guy on that, BCR, right, Anthony? We always talk about bootlegs,
that's right,
counters, reverses. He's responsible for containing that quarterback or that play coming back out there on those keepers. So he says, you know what? No, I'm going to move to the next level. And that's important on this run because he picks up that guy and boom, now you get the running back into the second level.
Yeah, this is, I don't have too much to add. You guys hit on it so much when already starting to kind of preview him a little bit. I just think it's a really solid option for a tight end too. Like you want someone as your tight end too, who is smart, is heady, is responsible in their run blocking and responsible in terms of their knowledge of the game and situational awareness. And then somebody who can fulfill that tight end one, role in spot duty. And Dissly hits it here, his strength in run blocking and his ability to succeed in this type of scheme, which fits into what Kromer's trying to do. Really it lends him to being somebody who can fit into this role and exist in this world. And he's honestly like an underappreciated player because of how smart he is. And smarts aren't something that show up in the box score, and thus isn't something that really gets appreciated.
Yeah, again, working with his tackle, creating that vertical displacement on 95. Wormley there, taking the block to the linebacker there. Look at him create the displacement. And look at now that block's easy. He's sealed off. The running back is able to get up north and south in there. Again, I like his overall game. He's not going to be flashy from the receiving sense. Look at him wash.
Kromer would love him. Kromer would watch this highlight and just gush about how great of a double team block that was.
Look at him wash TJ Watt right down the line of scrimmage. You see Watt try to beat him inside. No, I'm just going to take you where you want to go. My running back's going to get into the second, third level. Like there's just so much to this film here. And again, that was run blocking. Now here he is right here blocking Hunter, the Minnesota Vikings. Watch him latch on, boom, right there. Now move your feet. Stay with him. Look at the base and the balance there.
Look at his hand placement.
It's just beautiful. Like he's just really balanced in the run and pass game from a skill sense and just from from the shoulders up. Like understanding that, hey, I'm going to have a quarterback half boot in there. I need to run with him. So here, this is where, he will help you in the passing game. This is really right out of the Bills playbook. You get, a puller here, and then you sneak your tight end over here. It's called like 134 magic, I believe, in the Patriots playbook. And yes, he's open, but that whole play action fake there allows him to get in the open field. And I talked about kind of using that offhand. Look at the little right there, a little stiff arm to break the tackle, add a few more yards after. So again, he's not going to run away from people.
Right.
When we talk in the passing game, it's gonna be the scheme that gets him open, unlike Dawson Knox. But again, tight end 2, tight end 3, look at him shuck that guy off along the boundary. Like just good stuff from him. When we talk about, again, the balance in a tight end, that's what you want from those backup tight ends, right, Kendall?
Yeah, exactly. It's not the game-breaking stuff, it's the reliable stuff. And that's what obviously the Bills thought they were getting when Tommy Sweeney won that job over Jacob Hollister. But, maybe they made the wrong decision. And maybe that veteran that has had more time playing at this level is just more comfortable making these plays, being more responsible for his assignments and all that stuff. You can just see he's always in the right spot at the right time, and he's doing what's expected of him. And I think that's really just speaking to TE2 and what the Bills need.
Yeah, and he played in the same scheme. Like, it's very appealing, in my opinion, to bring a guy like that with that type of experience and just continuously creating holes for the run game. And when the Bills want to close out games and they go to these tight formations and run their duo concepts, Anthony, which we love, you can see how he is able to wall off guys right here and just create those holes at the line of scrimmage and this is literally right out of the Rams playbook. We saw this Cooper Kupp last week. Here comes that, quasi puller to lead there. It's a duo run, but it's, you got that puller at that wide receiver position. And again, Dissly is at the point of attack and he's creating those holes for the running backs.
It's not sexy, and it doesn't need to be when it's your tight end too. You want somebody who is responsible in their technique, who's smart, who understands. This one was really nice that you started to show, like, here, watch how he just gets across the face of his defender and steps into this zone block and walls off that side. Like, his body is to the inside of this hole. Like, the run doesn't work out, but he does his job. And that's what that role is for that tight end too. And the Bills have used, Tommy Doyle in that tight end 2 role. They wanted to use Spencer Brown in that role, but he had to be thrust into the starting right tackle role. And this would be a nice option because, again, we talk about the versatility piece. If you throw in an offensive lineman as that tight end 2, more often than not, it's going to be a run. But you throw somebody in like a Will Dissly, and all of a sudden, okay, maybe he might release. Maybe this might be a pass. Maybe it's a play action opportunity, let alone the ability for him to step in spot duty if something were to happen, God forbid, knock on wood, to Dawson Knox. So I think it's a really, again, not sexy and maybe not fun, Erik, for you to have to go through the film to find it. But I think that's a solid prospect in terms of adding in free agency.
Yeah, I think he's got the balance that they want and need. And I've seen a lot of Sweeney comments in the chat room. And yeah, he has shown flashes and, but he was also affected, quite badly when it comes to, COVID and whatnot. So I think Dissly really is a veteran Tommy Sweeney. He's been in the league for many years. And at times a couple years ago, he was tight end 1 in their scheme for Russell Wilson. And, he had some flashes himself. And I think just that type of veteran presence, if he's able to hit the market, I think he's a guy that would fit perfectly in the Bills offense as that depth option at tight end. So the other guy that I brought up was is a San Francisco 49er, Ross Dwelley. Another guy that, again, you got to be able to play special teams. He played it 42% of the time. Last year when Kittle was banged up, he didn't just play special teams. He actually played a lot of those, a lot of the snap percentage. We're talking about, being a starter in place of an injured star, in place of a guy that was the focal point of the 49ers offense. In 2020, he had a 45.9% snap rate as opposed to just under 18% in 2021. So he's a guy that obviously had to step up in 2020 for Kittle. Now, of course, he's not to that stature. 6'5", 240-pound tight end. He's willing to do the little things, the dirty work, playing in the box, blocking. I want to say he's physical in one-on-one situations, but he's willing to sacrifice his body, as you'll see in some of these clips. He's average, when it comes to reading coverages. He doesn't do anything exotic over the middle. He'll read, he's got the middle of the field open he'll take that. Like, he doesn't do anything crazy as far as finding the soft spots. He does what's asked of him in the route concept. But he's got that size to get up the seam. And he uses that his big body to kind of box out those safeties and guys down the field. And we talk about the blocking angle and the run blocking, really good at, the feed blocks where you're feeding a defensive end or defensive tackle on an outside shade on a tackle, feeding him over the tackle to help him. I think he can do that and then climb to the next level. I think those are things that you'll see on some of the film that I pulled up. But I want to get your guys' quick thoughts on him, and maybe even, just from looking at some of the film that I pulled up.
I just like with Dwelley and coming from San Francisco, you're going to get a responsible blocker who can also function in the play action game. Like, what a Shanahan scheme is, how important it is to be able to block and also function in the pass game if you're a tight end. And he's somebody he's not George Kittle, but he stepped in and had some really solid splash plays when Kittle missed time. Kittle loves him. There's a lot of clips of him just whooping it up for the plays that Ross Dwelley was making while Kittle was out. So this is another option too. Again, not sexy, but a responsible guy who can fill in, add you some quality reps at tight end too, but potentially step in for a number one if they have to miss time.
Yeah, and Kendall, this, again, nothing flashy here, but he finds a little curl over the middle for his quarterback. And again, a young quarterback, like, yes, be that underneath guy, nothing special, but get open, catch it, get up the field, stay ahead of the chains.
Yeah, that's the thing you're looking for with TE2. You're looking for a guy who can do what he's asked to do when he's schemed up to do it. And they're not always going to be schemed up to make plays, but when you are, you need to show that you can. And Dwelley did that on multiple occasions when he had to step in for Kittle, and that just bodes well for his stock in this free agent market. He showed, obviously, that he's a good blocker, like you said, and with the system that they like to run with all those outside zones and different run packages that they like to use. But then also, we know how much they like to use their tight ends in the passing game. And you can see here, he's climbing up the seam, making a nice hands catch there. And the play before, he's sitting, finding a nice soft spot in the zone for his young quarterback, Nick Mullins. So showing that kind of headiness and that kind of versatility in how he can play the game and how he can win versus what he's comfortable winning. It's nice to see that he has different ways of doing it.
And here's, Shanahan's really known for his zone schemes, but here's a gap scheme. And we talked about getting leverage. So Trent Williams gets the leverage. He's playing into this defender right here. Now watch Dwelley slam him over to Williams, but then also climb to this linebacker right here who's scraping across. Watch him climb after the bang block and feed block, and then boom, seal it off. And look at the hand leverage right here. You can see it right there. And he's able to seal that guy off late in the game, get the running back up into the hole and down the field, keep that clock running. Here's one where hand. Hand. Here's another. I talked about getting up the seam, just an easy release up the seam, more scheme based here. Get to the seam, but I talked about him, boxing guys out. He boxes out the corner right there on the tail end for the touchdown against Seattle. Again, nothing special, but when you're given this opportunity, one-on-one, a big tight end versus a corner, use your body, use your skill set to catch the ball with your hands and your body to shield that guy off. And you see him do it there. But some of these next clips are really what I like about him doing the dirty work. He's right here off the edge right here, and they're running a play to the perimeter on that little touch pass to him. Look at him assess. Okay, do I go climb to this guy or do I continue out wide here? Watch him assess that, process it. He sees a crack block right there from his receiver. I'm going to go to the next guy, pick him up, knock him out of bounds, pancake, Debo up the sideline for a big gain. So, again, just doing some little things. And here's another one, another feed block right here. And this is on Aaron Donald right here. So, again, analyze the competition, who he's washing down right there. Good hand placement right there to wash him down, get the running back into the line of scrimmage. Not a big gain, but he executed his job. But finally, I said he's willing to do the dirty work. This is the capper. Here he's coming across the formation and lighting up Aaron Donald, sacrificing his body and laying a lick on Aaron Donald right there so that he can't scrape down the line of scrimmage to make a play. This is the type of stuff that coaches love, Anthony.
Yeah, any chance you get the opportunity to physically punish a star on the other team, whether it's an offensive or defensive player, you want to. Coaches love that. And on top of that, it highlights that self-sacrificing mentality. I mean, one, it just cuts off Donald from this play, and it reduces the opportunity for him to make a backside play as Mostert gets upfield. But you love somebody showing no fear like that, willing to sacrifice their body. This is a McDermott 101 thing. This is everybody doing their 111th. Dwelley sacrifices himself, and he takes out the best player in football. Again, not sexy. That one's a little sexy. That's a sexy block. That one will show up. But again, quality play from a tight end too, and somebody who can be gotten on the cheap and potentially added to this roster.
Yeah, and I'll give an honorable mention for Durham Smythe. He's the tight end from the Dolphins. I'm sure, you're a big draft guy, Kendall. So I don't know about maybe your thoughts on him coming out of Notre Dame, his play at the Senior Bowl, because he played a lot for the Dolphins, especially last year. They were a 12 personnel-based offense. And obviously, again, who knows what direction the Bills go as far as personnel groupings this year. But he's a guy that showed that he could be the inline guy in 12 personnel, while Gesicki was that flex guy and guy who moved around. So what are your thoughts on Smythe as my honorable mention in this tight end film room?
Yeah, he's another guy that falls into this bucket where he's just that value tight end too, who can give you
a touchdown.
That's one of the ones with volume. Yeah. he's one of the guys who can give you a little pass game, but not something, not like a crazy playmaker in the pass game. He's going to do his job blocking, but you can see here, hey, if he's schemed and he's open, he's going to make a play for you. And God, I mean, it's tight end U over there at Notre Dame. I mean, you talk about George Kittle's tight end U. It's literally Notre Dame. They have a new tight end every single year. So you got to give it to him. He's given the Dolphins some production, nothing crazy, but like you said, being that Y tight end while Gesicki is out with an H or in the slot wherever Gesicki lines up, because he can go anywhere. But it'd be interesting to add him into the Bills roster because, like you alluded to, Knox can do some of that stuff. Did you say this year? I found it weird. Did you say this year was the least Knox lined up in line? That's crazy to me. I don't know why I felt like
he was down to 37%, I believe, in line, but it was down from like 42%. It wasn't
it's nothing crazy.
Right. So I mean, he was again flexed out a little more, but I really like Smythe, and I know Josh Allen did. We were talking at the Senior Bowl a few years ago. That was the first Senior Bowl that Cover One was down there, and we got to see obviously Josh Allen, and Anthony, Josh Allen really vibed well with Smythe down in at the Senior Bowl, and really put a lot of trust in him during the practices and during the game, as we saw kind of in that clip there. He trusted him with some throws, with some catches that weren't really Josh Allen type throws. You remember, Josh was going through that evaluation stage. Hey, I'm trying to show the scouts that, hey, I can throw with touch, right? I can throw with some layers. And he trusted Smythe to really come down with some of these plays here that I'll show here in a second. But I want to get your thoughts on, maybe that connection. Maybe there is some kind of connection. If Smythe, again, he had a career year for the Dolphins, but again, because he played a lot, but it was only like 300-something yards. It wasn't anything crazy as far as tight ends go. But again, maybe he's a guy that the Bills could use if they want to augment their 12 personnel grouping.
That relationship with Josh is a really cool point, because we see so much nowadays where the player input from the quarterback is a legitimate thing. And sometimes when it's not, like Aaron Rodgers is the prototypical example of him saying like, oh, they didn't ask me about personnel for this and that, yada, yada, so on and so forth. And, when you get down to these depth positions, it's easier to kind of come to your quarterback and be like, okay, here's these like 3-4 options we got. What do you think about each one? And start to gauge that input. And if Smythe's the type of guy who Josh, might vouch for a little bit and be like, hey, I really like the rapport that we built down in Mobile, and he's somebody who I trust, and I'd like to, continue to build with him. Like, let's see what we can get for that. So I think that Josh input is a really cool piece. And that could be something that, when you have these depth guys, they each have different traits and skill sets that separates them a little bit. But something that might put someone over the top is the relationship that they have or the previous production they have with your star franchise quarterback. So I think that's something, not to overplay, but it's something that shouldn't be discounted, because in today's NFL, it's a very real part for a lot of teams.
Yeah, again, special teams player, maybe that connection, good high-low type tight end with, some of his size. But he does have shorter arms. But again, you put him on those drive and shallow, concepts over the middle. You have Dox as an intermediate guy, like against base personnel with, 2 tight ends, you're probably getting possibly 3 linebackers on the field. So different ways to attack defenses, not the most physical guy and kind of rounds off routes, but I think a guy that, again, Josh Allen showed a lot of affinity for, and who knows, maybe there's something there. And, the staff, whether it's Brandon Beane or even McDermott, like they take Josh Allen's input into a lot of their decisions, especially when it comes to
Hollister was brought in last year. So, I mean, they definitely take it for something.
That's true.
Yeah, no, totally. So
Tanner Gentry.
Yeah.
On the roster.
Yeah, exactly. So that really does it for our film room this week. We're going to take a look at some other positions, obviously, over the next few weeks, but we appreciate everyone joining in. That was the running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. Make sure to throw your comments here after we're done on other guys maybe we haven't talked about. And if you need information on, the cap numbers on some of these free agents, obviously leave a comment. We'll have our capologist, Greg Thompson, get to it and throw you guys some numbers. But we hope that you guys got a little insight to some realistic options for the Bills. We're not going to just throw out these big names just for clicks and exposure. We're going to bring it to you in depth. Obviously, we just went 2 hours covering running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. So we appreciate everyone joining in. With that said, Kendall, I'll start with you, man. Where can everyone find you on social media and any content you have dropping this week?
So you guys can find me at Mursky Kendall on Twitter. I'll be doing just a bunch of draft stuff. I'm going to be diving into film this week. I won't be on YouTube that much this week. I'm going to visit my girlfriend to make up for not being together on Valentine's Day. So yeah, I gotta get down there to visit her. So I'm going to be watching a ton of film on the flight and while she's taking her classes and stuff like that. So I got a lot of downtime to watch some film. So yeah, you'll probably see a lot of film analysis stuff on Twitter or just general thoughts about some prospects on Twitter. So yeah, make sure to check me out at Mursky Kendall.
Appreciate it. Anthony, what's going on, buddy? What do you have rolling this week?
Find me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro 2_ANT. I got a really cool episode coming on Disguise Coverage tomorrow night, live Wednesday, 7 p.m. Going to be taking a deep dive into how Gabriel Davis became wide receiver 2 for the Buffalo Bills in 2021, throwing out a lot of what he did in terms of his route progression with some advanced analytics and metrics and some film stuff that backs it up. So really excited for that. And then as always, you find me here as one of the co-hosts on the Cover One Film Room, and find me on Twitter doing anything and everything Bills related, doing a lot of draft stuff, a lot of free agent stuff, breaking down a lot of film and posting clips on any and every prospect, trying to break down the top 10 to 15 for every single prospect group as we get closer and closer to this NFL draft, which is coming right around the corner. We got the Combine a couple weeks away in the beginning of March, so it's going to be a good time. I'm excited.
Yeah, and for me, I have a few things in the works. Obviously, we'll be probably picking some positions to kind of look over the next week for next week's film room. As far as free agent targets go, I have a long form Ed Oliver video going. I just finished all the film, kind of organizing it on, how teams were attacking him and the Bills defense. Some things that he needs to work on, some things that really stood out this year on that, during his breakout season going forward. So we appreciate everyone tuning in. Be on a lookout for that. As someone said in the chat room, like our videos, leave a comment. It really helps our exposure. It helps other people that may not know about the Cover One Sports Network, gets their eyes on our product and what we bring. And, obviously there's been some great comments on the type of content that we bring. And we try to, again, do it in a realistic way, do it, in an informative way, but also try to teach a little bit here and there, and maybe some things to look at on film here in the film room that we show you. And then you can watch it in the broadcast angle, or even if you want to get into the coach's film. So we hope that you guys, can pull a lot out of these episodes. I know they're lengthy, but again, come back to it later if you don't finish it. It's going to be there. It's going to be on the Cover One YouTube channel. So thanks for all the comments, guys. And until next week, on behalf of Kendall and Anthony, I'm Erik Turner. We'll see you.